7 o'clock, that got everybody quieted down. Welcome, everybody. You up and running? You're up and running, great. All right. You guys all set?
All set.
All right. Well, again, welcome everybody to the Town of Williston's Development Review Board for Tuesday, November 14th, 2017. We're going to bring the meeting to order at 7 o'clock.
Thursday, Saladino.
Saladino, welcome. We may need a space. Yeah, no, we have not. Okay, so we do have 3 items on the agenda tonight. I did ask just a second ago if everybody signed in. Please do so if you have not already. We are going to start off tonight with DP 10-34 and its amendment number 3 for the Chitin Solid Waste District.
Thanks, Paul.
Good evening. Good evening. Names and addresses, gentlemen.
Paul O'Leary, O'Leary Burke Civil Associates, 13 Corporate Drive, Essex Junction, Vermont.
And I'm Brian Wright, 1021 Redmond Road, Williston, with the Chitin Solid Waste District.
Great. Mr. Beliveau,
Yes, thank you.
you're it.
Okay. So this is a request to amend a discretionary permit for Chitin Solid Waste. So Chitin Solid Waste operates a variety of, there's a variety of parts of their operation up on Redmond Road. This is related to the composting facility, which was originally approved back in 2010. There've been a couple of amendments since then. They originally had a permit for a certain amount of capacity. They expanded that. They also came in and amended their permit and added a greenhouse so they could do product testing on site a couple of years later. And in this particular case, they're looking to build an additional stormwater facility. And the purpose of this is to be able to collect runoff from larger flow storms. It's a problem that we're seeing more and more different parts of the state as the climate changes. The runoff from this area, which is sort of the more northern or northeastern end of their operation, this is coming off of where they have the curing area, not the main part of the composting facility. They have a whole separate stormwater facility that collects any runoff or leachate that comes from where they do the main part of the composting thing, where they're basically breaking down raw materials. And if I remember correctly, I believe Brian said that this was something that the state wanted you to do because there were some issues with
Yeah, the sand pit, there's a couple things. We wanted to combine 2 storm ponds into one bigger one, and then we wanted to have better drainage in the sand.
So, you know, the use of the composting facility, it's all approved, it's an allowed use. This is just an accessory or support function that would be part of the overall functioning of the composting operation. We received no comments from Public Works, so they don't have any issues with that. No comments from the fire department, they don't have any issues with it. The planning office doesn't have any issues with it. And so we've prepared some rather generic conditions of approval, just in terms of submitting final plans within the deadline and obtaining a permit prior to starting any construction.
Great. Gentlemen, what would you like to add to that? How about just kind of a basic rundown of an expansion on maybe what Ken has said so far?
I'll go
Yeah,
first,
go
you
ahead.
can fill it in.
Yeah.
So there's an existing area which we call the curing area. All right, once it's processed, it goes to this certain area, it's Wind Road, and it cures. And any runoff that comes off the curing piles are actually regulated by the Solid Waste Division, not by the Stormwater Division. So we're not looking at a stormwater permit, it's permitted under our solid waste permit. The solid waste permit requires that we infiltrate the runoff that comes in contact with the curing piles. So currently, we have a low area on the downhill side that collects the runoff and it infiltrates in. And most all the time, it works great. But a couple years ago, when we had a really wet spring and we had some heavy rains, the infiltration area couldn't handle the runoff that was coming off the curing piles. And it actually filled to the top and it overflowed down a portion of Redmond Road. And there was a small amount of erosion that occurred along Redmond Road that we had to correct. So the goal of this is we're going to put in a larger infiltration area. It about triples the existing area that's there. And if we do get an unusually wet spring again or really heavy rains, instead of overflowing going down Redmond Drive, we've designed an overflow that goes into a separate ravine. There's a riprap spillway that collects. This has been reviewed by the state. And so we're hopeful that it doesn't overflow because we've tripled the volume of the infiltration area. If it does overflow, we're going to direct it away from Redmond Road so it doesn't cause any erosion. And that's pretty much about it. We do some work in the old Casey pit, and we have the same issue there. You know, about every 5 years when it's really wet, we get a little bit of standing water in the pit in the spring. So actually just putting an under drain down the middle of the pit that will discharge to an adjacent ravine. So two action items going on out on the project.
Great. Questions from the board?
Just out of curiosity, why remove the 18-inch height? So the idea here is to drain across the road as opposed to under?
Yes, yeah, we want to get rid of that existing infiltration area at all and send everything to the new area across. So we're going to regrade it so it sheet flows across the road, and we've stoned an area of the road where it's going to sheet across. We know that it's going to require some maintenance, that stone's going to get clogged up every couple of years. We're going to have to just dig it out and replace it, but that's not a big item for us. There's not a lot of traffic in and out of that road, so.
Loose material over
Yep.
Yep.
Other questions from the board? Questions from the audience? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Close ZP 10-34, amendment number 3, Chitin Solid Waste District at 7:09. Okay. I did see a couple of people come in after the hearing was opened. Just if you can make sure that you did sign in. I saw one person do it and one person maybe not. Next up is DP 18-06, Vermont Hotel Group LLC. Come on up.
Should we just start without them?
Well, no, we can skip you guys and go to the next hearing and then come back to you.
I
Sure.
don't give time in case he's lost. I'm gonna check it out.
You send him a text. Okay, we are not going to open DP 18-06, Vermont Hotel Group. We're going to open DP 18-08, Sean Handy of DDH GSH Trust. Mr. Handy, if you are here, come on up.
MIM.
You am, you am.
Good evening. Paul O'Leary Burke Civil Associates, 13 Corporate Drive, Essex Junction, Vermont.
Sean Haney, 3020 South Road, Williston.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bellevue, is this you again? Not you. Aha. You're up.
This is a request for pre-application review for a proposed 4-lot subdivision residential subdivision of a 96.28 acre parcel located on Old Stage Road, north of Mountain View Road in the ARZD. The property is currently developed with a single-family home. The applicant's proposing to subdivide the single lot into 4 single-family home lots. And the remaining 72.24 acres is proposed as protected open space. The applicants indicated that Lot 1 may be subdivided into 4 or 5 lots in the future. Back in December 2014, the DRB reviewed a proposal for subdivision of this parcel into 2 lots. At that time, the DRB recommended proceeding to growth management. However, the applicant subsequently withdrew their application from growth management consideration. This is the first time the DRB will be hearing this proposal. Williston's Police, Fire, and Public Works Department reviewed the project. The Police Department had no comments. The Fire Department is concerned about the lack of water at the site and is requesting an augmentation of the water supply via either buried 15,000 gallon tank, 15,000 gallon cistern, or a pond, and is also requesting the installation of a dry hydrant connection accessible from a paved and plowed road. Department of Public Works submitted attached comments stating the project needs to conform to the Public Works specifications, and that as-built plans and engineering certifications are required at the completion of the project prior to certificate of occupancy. The Department of Public Works requested that the applicant show all utilities proposed and existing, and made a note that the future subdivision of Lot 1 will be required to follow their standard specifications. This proposal was also reviewed by the Williston Conservation Commission, and staff proposes that their recommendations be adopted as DRB recommendations moving forward. In summary, the WCC's recommendations address the requirement under Chapter 27 for a habitat disturbance assessment to be submitted as part of the discretionary permit application, and a request that the applicant address impacts to designated view shed areas on the parcel as well. The WCC also recommends that the applicant provide a public trail easement across the property more within or more or less parallel to the Velco easement, which the applicant has shown on the site plan. The proposed subdivision will be for purposes of adding 3 new dwelling units to the parcel. Single and 2-family dwelling units are an allowed use in the ARZD. The 96.2 acre parcel consists of less than an acre of steep slopes, and therefore 95.68 acres are available for development and for the purpose of calculating density. There are no wetlands shown on the parcel, but there also hasn't been a delineation. At 1 dwelling unit allowed per 80,000 square feet, and a theoretical maximum of 52 dwelling units are allowed, and the applicant has proposed 4 dwelling units. So any wetlands or wetland buffers present on the parcel would reduce the amount of the parcel counted for the purposes of determining the number of dwelling units allowed, but this is unlikely to have any impact on the number of lots that have been proposed. As a subdivision of a parcel of land 10.5 acres or greater, this project is required to set aside a minimum of 75% of the area of the parent parcel as permanently protected open space. The open space must include steep slopes, wetland areas, and setbacks, and any other resources required to be protected under Williston Bylaw, Chapter 27. The applicant's proposed 72.24 acres of open space meets the 75% requirement. The Williston Conservation Commission has made comments related to the requirements of open space development under Chapter 27 and Chapter 31. One of their findings states that the applicant has noted that Lot 1 may be subdivided in the future. Any future subdivision of the 15.4 acre Lot 1 is subject to the 75% open space protection requirement. And I think they were assuming that the current bylaws would apply into, infinity, which may not be the case. Staff notes the uncertainties inherent in contemplating future subdivision of this parcel, and therefore recommends that the DRB not include any reference to a possible future application in its recommendations for this proposal. As far as access goes, the proposed development for Lot 1 will be accessed from a private driveway known as Amber Lane. The bylaw allows up to 5 dwelling units on a shared driveway. The other proposed lots will be accessed from Old Stage Road. Permits for new single-family homes will have to be accompanied by impact fees, including traffic impact fees. Pre-application is also the stage where the DRB may ask for a traffic impact study if they so desire. Staff notes that in Williston, 3 additional single-family units would produce 3.03 new PM peak hour trip ends. So therefore, we're not recommending that the DRB request a traffic study for this project. For growth management, if so authorized, the applicant will proceed with a residential growth management allocation request for 3 additional units. Staff is recommending the project be allowed to move forward to growth management review with the following recommendations. All comments made by the fire department should be adopted as pre-application recommendations. Comments made by the Department of Public Works also be adopted as pre-application recommendations. And the applicant needs to meet all Public Works standard specifications. A habitat disturbance assessment shall be prepared and submitted with the applicant's discretionary permit application. And the applicant should grant the town a floating easement for a primitive path. And the applicant should site the houses so as to minimize the impact on the view shed.
Thank you, Melinda. Gentlemen?
Not too many comments, basically just one, talking about Lot 1. Originally, Sean plans on putting his house there, in the short term, and at this point in time, we don't have any plans to put anything else on Lot 1, but sometime in the future, he'd like to reserve that right to subdivide that. That's why it's a 15-acre lot. I understand that the bylaws can change and the board can't make any promises. We're fine with all that. We were a little surprised when we saw that the 15.45 acre lot would then be subject to the 75% open space requirement, thinking that, well, we had met our open space requirement. Kind of seems like double dipping to us, but if that's the case, we're not going to argue it, but if that's the way it's going to come down, then essentially the project's going to morph into a 5-lot subdivision instead of a 4-lot, because we'll take that 15.45 acres and we'll split it into 2 lots, and I'm pretty sure we'll make sure that it's less than 10.5 acres when we're done. So besides that, we're pretty well set. We have no issues with the staff notes or the recommendations as written. Actually, it's where Lot 1 is, there's a section of excellent Stetson soils. We don't think there's going to be any issues for us in terms of septic capacity. We expect that likely all the lots will probably utilize an area on Lot 1 for septic. So other than that, we're all set.
Okay, great. Questions from the board?
Is there a reason why Lot 1 is not being requested now?
Well, in terms of being subdivided, yeah, mostly for tax purposes. If it was subdivided now into, say, 4 lots or 5 lots, then I believe the assessor would look at it a little bit different. Plus, a majority of Lot 1 is now in current use, and we don't expect, we're only going to take enough, well, I believe it's already been
It's
taken
already-
out
there's
of
only 2
current
acres taken
use.
out.
2 acres has been taken out where Sean, hopes to put the house, so.
Other questions? Paul?
This well that I see right on the edge that sort of goes through the supposed open space down to Lot 2.
Yes. The existing
That's
well.
saying, is that saying that that well is supplying water to both Lot 1 and Lot 2?
No, just to Lot 2. I expect that Lot 1 will develop their own well. That's an existing well.
Okay.
That provides the
That's-
existing
I
house.
was trying to figure out what the deal on that was.
There's a couple other easements on the property that's not shown on this plan. Some of the other houses, the old Quinlan, well, one of the Quinlan houses, I think actually 2 of the Quinlan houses has easements and uses a portion of the property for a septic. And we'll show all those when we come back.
Okay. That was all I was curious about.
Other questions?
Did you have any comments on the fire department?
No, it's a little odd seeing how you could probably hit the new water tank, with a bow and arrow from where the house location is. So I'm not quite sure, but we'll have that conversation with the fire chief and
What about
see.
Ledgewood Drive? I mean, it's,
Yeah, well,
anyway.
it's a little, it was a little odd, right? Sitting there and looking at the new tank being built, but that's all right. We'll work that out. Fire chiefs normally is pretty reasonable, so.
I have one comment. It's a comment only. I'm doing it because I get to. You have a lovely piece of land.
I do.
You do, no question about it.
Very lucky to own it.
Beautiful, beautiful piece of land. And you've got, lot one with the drive-in is, also looks beautiful from this. Then you've got 4 other lots that are lined up on Old Stage Road that are squares, that are about as boring as you can possibly get. Why not do something where you have a single access, where there is a road driven in, the lots are clustered, the houses are clustered, they can be on the same size lots, the frontage stays clean, they don't get all broken up with a mailbox every 200 feet, and you end up with a more beautiful piece of property, my opinion, all right? So, you're free to do what you want. But it seems to me that, with the land that you have and some creativity, you've got a major lost opportunity. So, as I said, this is my opinion, and that's it. You don't have to respond.
I'll respect that. My opinion is different.
Yeah. Other questions from the board? Questions from the audience?
My name's Bruce Roy, I'm in Ledgewood Drive, I'm right back Sean's trailer right now. Sir. Do you have an idea where the building envelope will be for lot 1 for that single house? How close to our woodline that we have there?
Well, the 2-acre lot that I took out of land use, basically, where that little wooded piece that's just below the camper there that comes out a little bit towards my Christmas trees. It's from there, basically, from there down to the Christmas trees, and then back over towards the water tower. That's the 2-acre lot that's been taken out of land use for a building lot.
Okay, so closer to Mountain View then.
Correct.
So in where your trailer is right now, where respectively would you be building the home? In front of it, I mean, it's a beautiful view from where the trailer is, obviously.
Obviously, that's, the view is an important factor in where I'd like to build a house, yes. And so somewhere in front of that center field of Christmas trees, towards that hillside, would be ultimately where I'd like to build a house.
But further from where the trailer is right now.
Yeah, I don't think I'd keep it that close to the line.
Good. Do you think there'd be any well disruption from our side? I have a well that's very close to our property border, our adjacent property. Dropping your well, would there be any concerns of disrupting my water supply?
I would doubt it, but we would obviously consult with, the well company that would come out and, do that.
Okay.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, thanks.
So it's worth adding in relation to that question, sir, is that there will need to be a vegetative buffer around the whole periphery of the subdivision. Off the top of my head, I don't know how the depth of that would be. It sort of depends to what extent the applicant is able to utilize existing vegetation as opposed to having to supplement that with additional plantings. But, so there would be a vegetative buffer around the whole periphery of the subdivision that would be required. And then in addition to the delineation of building envelopes for individual building sites, that sort of thing.
I think I had a discussion with Melinda.
And that would all get determined at the discretionary permit stage. So this is stage one of a minimum three-stage process. So there's a lot of detailed things that would have to get worked out at a subsequent time.
Other questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, could you state your name?
Deb MacDonald on Old Stage Road.
Very good, thank you.
This is just a clarification question, because you had mentioned 4 lots on Old Stage. I thought there were only going to be 3 lots actually on Old Stage Road, and I'm assuming, Sean, maybe I'm not accurate, one of them already has a house on it?
Correct.
I may have
The old
misspoke.
Quinlan home.
Yeah, I may have misspoke.
2 additional lots on Old Stage Road.
Correct. My apologies.
Thank you, all right, because I did look online at the map that was drawn up, and then I thought, oh, maybe I wasn't understanding everything. And then 2 that are further down the road.
Correct.
Okay.
Just past Kathy's old house, 2
Right,
lots.
which is
Right.
Ben's house now,
Exactly.
so.
So I can I take the floor next?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ben Ellsworth, I also live on Old Stage Road. My property actually is right smack in the middle of the lots that you intend to build. First question is, do you intend on selling these as building lots, or do you intend on building them yourself and then selling them?
Building lots.
Building lots. Okay, great. My other question, I'm also somewhat concerned about the water. Currently we share a spring-fed well with the tenants that live in one of your lots right now. Are you planning on tapping into that well and to that spring? Or, as you said, do you intend on digging a well?
Not 100% sure at this point.
Okay.
You know, it depends on if that well can support another home comfortably, or, you know, if it's better to drill another well. I mean, for me personally, a drilled well's better water, but it, you know, that's open at this point.
Okay.
Any other questions, sir? Ben?
No, that's it for now.
Okay.
Marcia Uri, also Old Stage Road. Just clarification, whose land is under the power line?
Underneath the power line?
Yours.
It's ours. It's part of the parcel.
And whose will it be? The one that adjacent
that
to
would-
it,
that
right
would-
next to the road.
Still be yours.
It'd still be mine. Part of it, I mean, Mr. Ellsworth's land comes up a little ways and then cuts under it. That's where his mound system is now.
Yeah.
But I would still continue to own the parcel that's between the original house, Frank's, you know, house, and then the Velco power lines.
Other question from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's Georgianne Jenkins. I don't really understand so much of the process. So when does it happen that people look at the wetness of the land or the amount? We're at the end of Old Stage Road, and we have an awful lot of water from developments that have happened over the last 15 years that now flood our fields and have caused a new diversion ditch to be built down through Williston Woods. So, you know, more construction. When is the point where somebody looks at the wetlands or the amount of water that's going to run off from these developed properties?
Okay. Melinda, you want to tackle that?
So the applicant would have to get wetlands delineation and submit that with their application for a discretionary permit. They will also be required to submit a runoff and erosion control plan. So that will detail the plans for controlling stormwater from the development.
Just to follow up, and what happens when all that planning, in actuality, doesn't work? Is there recourse, or, I mean, I understand, you know, you do all the planning and the engineers say this should work. Does that happen? Is there recourse after the end is resulted?
Well, at some point, if you think that your property is being harmed by your neighbor's property, you go take them to court, and, you know, make your case to a judge that your neighbor has damaged your property in some way. You know, what I would say about water is, you know, we hear a lot of people talk about water, and, you know, one of the things that I've certainly become aware of in the last few years in listening to people from the state who are more expert on this issue than mine is the nature of how storms comes here in this part of the country has been changing over the years. And so what people may experience is, well, it's all because of what they did next door, or it's all because of what they did down the street. And maybe not. Maybe it's due to the fact that the nature of the storm events that we have now is we get more highly intensive storm events where you get more rain coming down in a shorter period of time. It's well known in Williston that large parts of town have clay soils that do not drain particularly well. Now, in this part of Williston, it's a little bit of a mix, because we know from looking at some of the soils maps, there's some sand and some soils that drain better than others, but large parts of town have clay soils and they don't drain particularly well. You get a lot of rain comes down in a short period of time, that's going to prove to be difficult. But as Melinda said, they'll have to show us a stormwater plan. They may be required to get a stormwater permit by the state, depending upon whether or not they trip the state thresholds for impervious surface. I don't know the answer to that at this particular point in time.
But what I'm understanding the process to be is you do your best planning, you take your best judgment as to how to create this, but then nobody goes back to see if it works. Is that accurate?
Well, once somebody gets a permit, they get to act on that permit.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the conserved piece. I'm not sure what the percentage was.
Sure, and if you could state your name and address again.
Deb McDonald, 1256 Old Stage Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that going to be conserved land for public use or simply conserved for the town? And did you mention a trail? If that's so, could I hear more about that?
So I think she is, Ms. McDonald is combining conserved and in current use, am I correct?
I'm not sure what the difference is really.
Okay, so Paul or Sean, you want to tackle it?
So essentially, 75% of the parcel about 72 acres will remain as open space. All right? It's not deeded to the town, it's not public land, it's continued to be owned by Sean. And basically there's mechanisms on it so it can't be developed in the future, as the board is well aware. The Conservation Committee has interest in establishing a primitive path easement across the property. And essentially at the first blush, they said they thought they'd like it to either be within the Velco easement or follow the Velco easement. And we're fine with working with the committee to establish that. We have no issue granting them an easement across the property. Where the path is going to be at this point in time, we don't know. But I believe what they're talking about is a primitive path, not a paved 8-foot wide bike path or anything like that. So.
Okay, so like a hiking trail?
Correct.
Type of thing? I guess my next concern, which since we have so many issues with cars on the road because of the orchard and several tree farms, is parking of cars on the road to access something like that. I don't know if that would be addressed in a future plan, but just a question to be raised. Because it's a narrow road and we've got a lot of issues with traffic.
Other questions or comments from the audience? Further questions or comments from the board? Nope. Nope. You're okay with staff notes?
Yes, we are.
Scott, can I add one other comment?
Yes, yes, sir.
So just to make it clear, because I know some of you, maybe you haven't come to a lot of these hearings before. So for somebody to get a subdivision approved, this is what's called pre-application. This is step one. Step two is going to take place in the end of March, and that's growth management. Some of you may know we have this arduous and exacting growth management process. Takes place once a year. It's loads of fun. And as part of that process, the applicant gets to make some decisions about things that they may or may not want to include in their subdivision. So Deb, part of your question about who's going to own the open space, that's the kind of thing the applicant, if the applicant says we're going to place a conservation easement on that open space, or the applicant says that we would work out some deal with the land trust, the applicant would get more points in growth management if they did it that way, as opposed to just saying it's going to be designated open space on the plot and we're going to continue to own it. So part of it, the ball's in the court of the applicant to some extent, and they decide what they want to include as part of the project or not, and they will get more or fewer points based on what it is that they do. So that's all going to take place the fourth week of March. And then after that, assuming if the applicant gets allocation, they have 1 year from that date to come in to submit an application for a discretionary permit. And that's the time at which we get all the engineering. So some of the questions about wells and septic systems and drainage and all that stuff, all that engineering detail would need to be provided at that time. So that's just to let you know about the process as it goes from here.
Thanks, Cal.
With that in mind, does anybody else have any other questions? Anything more from the board? Great. Thank you all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm going to close DP 18-08 to Sean Handy of DDH GSH Trust at 7:38.
Very nice.
Footprint for me?
You start.
No sidewalk there.
Sure, down the front. Try my best.
Okay.
Press here, you don't want to.
Welcome, everybody. Next up is DP 18-06, Vermont Hotel Group LLC. Everybody is here?
We're going to go with who's here.
We're going to go with who's here. Very good. All right. Okay. If you would state your names and your addresses, please.
My name is Abby Derry. I'm with Trudell Consulting Engineers.
Steve Gall at G4 Design Studios, we're the architects.
Great. Can you say that one more time? Three times slower.
Steve Gall at G4 Design Studios, we're the architects.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Bellabo, is this you or is this Matt?
No,
this is
Matt.
Matt. Okay, I keep on calling on you and you keep on passing the buck.
Right, I like it that way.
I like it that way. Okay. The chair does want to make one comment before we get going, and that is that from the packet that was provided to us, I note that there is a 4-story hotel proposed. Williston allows 3 stories, not 4 stories. I'm seeing surprise on your faces. So
I may be able to shed some light on the.
okay, Matt is maybe you can surprise us both.
Yeah.
I might.
Okay?
Well, let me start by just introducing this. This is a request for pre-application review. It's for a new hotel on an existing developed site in Blair Park, the site that hosts the post office as well as the UPS store, Paper Peddler, Ski the East retail, and some other uses as well. And I'll skip right to the discussion of height because this question was posed to us recently about building height and the incentivizing of building height in the zoning district. So in 2015, the Business Park Zoning District was amended, the bylaw that governs the Business Park Zoning District was amended to extend the height incentive that is available in the Taft Corners zoning district across the street to this zoning district. There are two ways you can access that height incentive, which raises the height limit from 36 feet to 52 feet. You can build permanently, or rather perpetually affordable housing, or you can provide significant amount of the building's parking demand in a structure or underneath the building. In the Taft Corners zoning district where this incentive is available, there's another paragraph under the height incentive that says the intent of this is not to have people build 4 and 5 story buildings with flat roofs. The intent of this is to build 3 and maybe 4 story buildings depending on the grade if they have a pitched roof. So that's the caveat to the height incentive that exists in the Taft Corners district. In the Business Park district, the height incentive says you can go from 36 to 52 if you provide affordable housing or structured parking, period. And the nice words about putting it 3 or 4 stories under a pitched roof is actually absent from that piece of the bylaw. That said, what the applicants have shown us at pre-application is under 52 feet or at 52 feet, has 4 stories, but does also have a pitched roof. So my advice would be that the project as rendered right now does meet the requirements to tap into the height incentive in Business Park.
Well, that's news to me. Okay, great.
It was a surprise to me to think that it was the other way when I heard that question asked recently, because I thought I'd nailed that down, so I'm glad we're clear on that. So, moving past that, I'll just go through.
So why don't we start, let's go back to the beginning, because I think we all just learned something that we didn't know. So we'll go back to the beginning and start up from that and walk through it.
So, this is a
request. Sorry to give you a heart attack.
That's why we do pre-application.
Is anybody sleeping?
Everybody's at a preliminary level. So this is the preliminary stage. This is the first stage of a process that also involves a discretionary permit hearing where there's far greater requirements for the kind of information the applicant would have to provide to the board, as well as eventually the filing of final plans in accordance with any conditions of approval issued by the board. Those are our other 2 steps here. So pre-application is understood to be a concept level review. Multiple concepts are encouraged. Often, like in this case, applicants do come to us with one idea of what they want to build and where they want to put it. And so you have one concept in front of you. This is the stage of review where the DRB can request a couple of things as part of discretionary permit review. The DRB can ask, for example, for a traffic study. Staff is recommending that the DRB ask for some information about traffic, as well as shared parking study, and where there are multiple uses on the site and uses proposed and a general desire to not build more parking than is necessary, staff is recommending that if the applicants proceed with discretion, that they provide the DRB with a shared parking study. So the building that's proposed is 58,000 square feet, 96 rooms. It's a 4-story hotel with a basement level of parking below grade underneath it. There is a little bit of grade on the site. You can see that in sheet C10-02 that was in your set. It's not as dramatic as it is as you come closer up to the Taft Corners intersection, but there is a little bit of a grade on the site.
That said, what the applicant's rendered puts that parking level entirely below grade, with the first floor essentially at grade on the post office or retail store side of the parking lot. This is the first time this project has been reviewed by the DRB. The site was originally developed under North Shore Partnership in 1985, and in much more recent history, the DRB did approve a master sign plan for the site under discretionary permit 15-20, because there are multiple commercial tenants on the site. So the proposed use is a hotel. Williston uses the North America Industry Classification System to define uses. NAICS use number 721, lodging, which covers hotels, is listed as an allowed use in the zoning district. Access to the site is proposed by the 3 curb cuts that currently exist on the site. No new curb cuts to Blair Park Road are proposed as part of the application. As I mentioned, staff is recommending that the DRB talk with the applicant about traffic generation and whether you want a traffic study or trip generation information. That may be something the board would like to discuss with the applicant. There are some landscape buffer requirements. We have street frontages on 3 sides of this building where the requirements of Chapter 29 would come into play, essentially dictating a street tree section that generally looks like one major tree every 30 feet or so, or 3 per 100. There are a large number of existing mature trees on the site, but there are some places that'll need to be filled in. And then the property has a side yard setback with the adjacent Ashley Furniture Building to the east. The applicant has shown a 10-foot setback there. You could fit a 9-foot wide type 2, I believe, landscape buffer, a continuous screening hedge within that barrier and come into compliance with Chapter 23. Uses are basically other commercial buffering to other commercial, so generally fairly narrow buffers are allowed when the uses are as similar as that. In terms of site maintenance, going forward, if the applicants proceed to discretionary permit review, there will be information required on the site about dumpster locations and screening, as well as any compactors, snow storage areas, and the like. In terms of outdoor lighting, if the applicant proceeds to discretionary permit, a complete photometric plan will be required showing compliance with the town's lighting standards. In general, those standards involve both a maximum amount of light on the site, a requirement that the light all be downward shielded, that the light not trespass off of the site, and that areas that are proposed to be lit are lit uniformly. The town does also have standards related to architectural lighting, primarily prohibiting bands of light that illuminate the entire structure, but rather, ponds or islands of light that highlight architectural features, and the maximum height for exterior lighting on a building in Williston is set at 15 feet above grade. In terms of parking, as I mentioned, the applicant is proposing additional parking, a reconfiguration of the surface parking lot, as well as parking under the building. And as I mentioned, the staff is recommending that the DRB require a shared parking study justifying the amount of parking proposed in total on the site. The applicant has identified in their preliminary plan that they are able to access up to a 20% reduction in total required parking on the site due to their proximity to transit. So there's a transit shelter and stop just the other side of Blair Park Road on Williston Road, and there's service with 15-minute headways on Williston Road from here to downtown Burlington. So staff would generally support a significant discount in parking numbers based on that, as well as whatever can be accomplished through shared parking. I would note that when the whole thing comes in for discretionary permit, we have a legacy site that was built under older development standards going back as far as 1985. The parking, including all of the requirements that come out of parking, should be addressed site-wide when it comes back in. So that means looking at the number of ADA or handicap spaces, outdoor bicycle storage, indoor bicycle storage, and commuter end-of-trip facilities, i.e. employee showers. I did mention, I sort of jumped the gun and started on the height bonus. There is a height bonus available in this zoning district for the provision of structured parking. That height bonus increases the limit from 36 feet above average finished grade to 52 feet above average finished grade. And I'll just note that in Williston, the maximum height includes everything that's attached to the building. So we sometimes get questions from people, is it the midpoint of the roof? Do my chimneys count, et cetera? In Williston, everything's got to fit under either the 36 or the 52-foot limit. There is existing signage on the site. There will need to be a revised master sign plan provided as part of an application for a discretionary permit. I hope that that is far more to scale, better and accurate than the one that exists for the site today. And I say that because I basically prepared the one for the site today, and it was a quick job to help the owner who needed to get some retail tenants in at the time, and it wasn't my most detailed work. So there's a great opportunity to brush up the master sign plan on the site and make it better than the one I more or less did. In terms of design review, this property is both in our growth center and in the town's design review district. This means that the requirements of Chapter 22 apply, and that the DRB will be receiving Design Advisory Committee advice from the Historic and Architectural Advisory Committee at discretionary permit stage. In general, a quick swipe through the requirements of Chapter 22 that relate to single-use buildings like this. Windows face the street, entrances face the street, no dead walls, provide airlocks. In other words, there's not a major door on the site that just, or on the building that just opens out and, you know, exposes conditioned space directly to the outside. Hotels almost categorically have that sort of thing. They generally don't have dead walls. The applicant has presented a rendering of what the building might look like, showing that pitched roof element, showing a facade with a couple different materials on it and some articulation. You know, at discretionary permit stage, we'll talk in greater detail about material selection and things like that, but the staff impression is it's going in the right direction for compliance with the design review chapter's requirements. That said, I have prepared recommendations and a draft motion authorizing the applicant to move forward to discretionary permit review. We did receive comment memos from both fire and public works. I would characterize the comments of both being fairly general and generally pointing out requirements either in the public works specifications or the fire department plan review requirements that would need to be met and shown to be met at the discretionary permit stage. We always encourage applicants to talk to those commenting departments outside of their conversations with us and make sure there's no bugaboos there, but I didn't see anything in the comment memos that seemed out of the ordinary. So with that, I'll leave you with the draft motion and let the applicant talk. Great, thank you, Matt. Okay, your turn.
What else is there to say?
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Thank you for the.
You're going to flesh out what you want to do.
Thank you for the summary. So, yeah, basically they want to build a 96-unit hotel. They want to go up to the 52 feet maximum height that's allowed, with taking the credit for the underground parking. And I do know a few more things since this has been submitted. One is that there's not going to be a pool. And two, the access to the underground parking might not be on the west face of the building. We might come off of the north into and out of the north side of the building. So that's just a little change since this submittal. But yeah, so after this meeting, we're gonna get plans together and move on to discretionary permit, if that's acceptable. And we're here to see what you think, get your comments, and find out what we need to incorporate into our discretionary permit application. Steve,
Okay, great. Anything more?
No, I'm good.
Questions on the board?
So, can you point out, I think I understand this, that the current access is shown for the parking garage is right up next to Williston Road, but you're suggesting that it's gonna actually be somewhere else? Can you point that out?
Yep. This is a pedestrian access right here. This is not driving. This might go away. This is going away, and we might come in here.
That's what I thought you were saying.
Yep.
question for staff. The portion of the structured parking allows them to go up to 52 feet. Now, I guess, and then a question for you then, if the shared parking assessment shows that you don't need those extra 40 spaces, it seems like you're building that just to get another floor, but you're actually building, that floor is just for, is parking, right? If you didn't need that parking, then you could drop down to 3 stories, or, you know.
If we didn't need that part, I think we would keep the parking because they want to have the 96 units from a cost perspective. So they want
But
to.
couldn't you still keep the 96 units, but just,
We would have a basement level of units then, and I don't know that they would allow that. Is that right? Am I thinking about that right?
well, would it be a base, I mean, oh, I'm with you, I'm with you.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, if we have underground parking, we can't go 4 stories. Correct?
right,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
And we gotta go 3, right?
I mean, the other thing is, if a study were to show that with all of the underground parking proposed by the applicant, there was a reason to not need as much surface parking as is on the site today, the applicants could propose to reconfigure and reduce that surface parking, which would be in line with a couple of goals in the town plan, so that, you know, there's nothing prohibiting, in fact, maybe a little bit of incentive to go ahead and do that, if they wanted to.
The second question was just the configuration on the lot. It seems like given the existing parking and turning 90 degrees to kind of align with Wilson Road, it might be a little imposing to have the 52-foot facade along Wilson Road, but it seems like it would lay in better with the overall circulation parking. Did you look at that?
Yes, our landscape architect did several options on the best configuration, and I think with the way the grade goes, having it in this configuration, it works better for what's on site.
I think it would be great, though, as we move further into the process, to see that elevation from Williston Road, because that's really not, it's really not shown on here. And I understand this is pre-application,
Right.
but when we get to the DP phase, I'm going to want to see what that looks like, how that building is experienced from people that are driving by or walking along there, since you have a pedestrian access.
Right, yeah, Steve would come up with several.
Yeah, we'll have 3D models showing different angles, you know, going up and down Route 2A to give that impression how it's gonna look like.
The other option you can do is you can put up the famous 52-foot balloon and let them see where the tops of these things are. Just put 3 or 4 of them up there and you get an eyeball of what you're looking at.
Okay.
One other issue that I just happened to look, the back side of this building, is that a downslope towards your building? You know, the picture here makes it look like there's a fair downslope back towards the building. The only reason I ask that question is because my barn is 70 foot wide. When the snow comes off of that thing, I end up with a pile that's rather gigantic along the side of the building. I end up having to go with the tractors and, you know, move it out of there so it doesn't leak back into the building. And I'm just saying, if you got a downslope and you have snow come off your roof and you have like a 5-foot pile there, you're gonna have leakage back towards your building and into your parking garage. So I was just kind of like saying, you know, if you looked at dealing with that in the winter.
Not yet. We understand the site has some engineering challenges, but
That was all?
that's on our minds, yes.
Yeah.
But you have to mention that, right? You can't send it towards the
Right, the roof has to be pitched in the middle.
Other questions from the board? Questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Georgianne Jenkins, Old Stage Road. The issue with underground parking, is that designed for the residents in the hotel? Or is it possible that it would have some other public parking use?
I'm guessing it's for the residents of the hotel, if you'd like to confirm that, or not.
I can confirm that. It would be for the use of the hotel.
Ma'am,
Are there plans to have a restroom?
could you state your name and your,
Marcia Uriel, State Road.
thank you.
Are there plans to include a restaurant?
I don't think the first floor plan had a
Right.
restaurant, not at this time, no.
Well, is it allowed in this zone?
And
So, yeah, restaurant would only be allowed in the zoning district as an accessory use to the hotel. So, the typical food service that happens in a hotel would likely be able to be approved as accessory, but something that was much bigger in size would tip the balance beyond what's currently allowed. So in the business park district, it's surrounded on, or it's bordered on two sides by the Taft Corners district, where you have, standalone restaurants, you have retail. Business park, the way it's zoned today, is sort of reflective of its past as an office park. Retail is allowed on parcels like this one that front on Route 2, but standalone restaurants aren't allowed in the zoning district at all right now. The sandwich company that does exist there predates that zoning.
Okay.
Ian Jenkins, Old Stage Road again. And who is the owner, operator of this hotel?
The applicant is Vermont Hotel Group.
Vermont Hotel Group? Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Anything else? Any other questions from the audience? Okay, all right. Anything else you'd like to add to this?
I
Very
think
good.
we're good with the staff recommendations on what they want to see, the traffic study.
All right. The board will talk about it in deliberations, and you can call in the morning and chat with staff.
Great, I will.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're going to close DP 18-06 Vermont Hotel Group at 8:01.
Well, I know, I was just thinking, why did I think of that when I read this? I can't find it, yeah, one of the things I can't find it. Is that a question you could ask? Is that a question you could ask? I don't know if you're sure I can, but should I? Don't matter who does it.
Max coming back in.
No, he ran away.
I can understand that.
Nice. He's come back.
We'll probably tackle that one last, because it came last. Does, anybody have any comments on Chitin Solid Waste District? That's pretty easy. Pretty straightforward.
What's initiating the having to do that? I mean, is that the state mandating it, or is that why they're going ahead and being?
I don't know, Melinda.
Don't know.
I think what Brian said was that they have some sort of a permit, I think, from the Solid Waste Division of the state. And I think what I heard him say was not the stormwater people per se, but the solid waste people wanted them to build a better facility, because when they would get these big storms, they would get some runoff from the curing area. And I think because of the organic material, the nature of compost being what it is, it's all this organic material. And they want that to be contained because it can contribute to phosphorus and all that other bad stuff that we hear about all the time. And so that's what's driving the need for the facility.
So they're either trying to be good neighbors or they've noticed some form of increased runoff.
No, I think they're trying to stay out of trouble. I think is what.
Yeah. I think you're probably right.
Fix it. It's going to be a lot harder and more controversial later.
Right. Mr. Saladino, you want to read that one?
Sure.
Great. We're going to go in the order we heard them in. Quinlan residential subdivision. Didn't seem to elicit a lot of comments or questions from anybody.
Only the controversial thing seemed to be the re-subdivision concept.
They're playing with the rules.
Sure.
Right?
I agree with everything that was said.
Paul was upfront about it.
Yeah.
And they're doing exactly what they're allowed to do.
So we'll see that as
The fire department is asking, not requiring, asking for one of three different things. We don't have to have it in there.
No, they said they were gonna work with the fire department, so.
Yeah, no, I'm simply saying that there is, it's an ask on the fire department's part. It's not not a mandate. And if they're willing to do it, that's perfect. That's fine by me. Habitat disturbance, fuel shed, trail easements. Those are all the staff comments, staff recommendations.
Yep. The question of about subdividing lot 1 into something less than 10 acres. When was he envisioning that happening? Before
Down the road
road
sometime.
management?
No, at no time, down the road sometime.
It sounds almost like the marathon one that you guys ran. I'm saying future.
Well, again, they were pretty honest about why they weren't doing it. They don't want 4 or 5 different lots they get taxed on. They want just one.
But wasn't his point though, if he comes back at a later date to try to subdivide lot 1, then 75% of that would have to be set aside
That's
for open
correct.
space. And he didn't want that.
Unless he subdivides it right
Right
now
now.
into 2 lots, neither of which are over 10.5 acres.
But he's not proposing that, right?
I think we're gonna see that at DP.
I think that's what we're gonna see.
Yeah, so he'll need to come back and ask for allocation.
Right.
to
In
do
March.
that in March.
For growth management, he's gonna need to tell us how many units of allocation he wants.
But he doesn't have to show it on the pre-app stage to show that extra lot line.
Well, I think that he's mentioning it, pre-app is a discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you can say, if you could say how many lots you want him to move forward to for growth management, if you really want to get that detailed at this moment in time.
But I guess he's not bound by the 4 lots. He can come back with 5 at the discretionary pace.
Right, well, we would typically counsel applicants to not, to be upfront about what it is that they're really asking for, because.
I think he did that.
Right, because otherwise, what tends to happen is if folks only heard 4, and then all of a sudden they hear 5, and they go, wait a minute, you told us 4 back then. So I think in his verbal report, he was, pretty upfront, and the issue was addressed in the staff notes. But he's gonna get nailed down in March when he comes in for growth management. He's gonna ask for a specific number of units of allocation. And then, of course, when he comes into DP, he can't propose any more lots than he's got allocation for.
Right. He could come back in for that 10-acre lot to get a subdivision permit.
Sure.
Later, they'll have to comply with all the rules that are in place at that time.
Which could be stricter, they could be more lenient, or who knows what they might be, whatever moment in
Could
time.
require a minimum lot size of 11 acres.
Or we could require open space set aside on lots of 5 acres instead of 10.5 like it is today. someone wants to create lots today that won't be subject to today's open space requirements, if they come in and want to subdivide them, and if they come in and do that and the rules haven't changed, they can do that.
Everybody okay with the recommendations on that?
So, just a question. Again, it says here, staff therefore recommends the DRB not include any reference to a possible future application in its recommendations to this proposal. And I haven't had a chance to read these yet, but I'm assuming that there are, that you drafted these out of that aforementioned new subdivision. Okay.
I mean, his comment tonight was, because that's new information for us about splitting it up into 2 lots versus 1 lot.
So, but we're not saying anything then about the fact that that would need to be a 75% set aside if it's more than 10.5 acres.
We're not saying it will be subject to what rules might be in effect in the future, and we're not saying it won't be subject to what rules might be in effect in the future.
Staying away from it.
But we did have this discussion tonight to allow them to know what,
Right.
how that would be interpreted.
So if the rules don't change and you create lots that are 10.5 acres or less than 10.5 acres, and the rules don't change, you lots.
I find it interesting that he is doing what he's doing with that humongous piece of land.
Yeah. The other
His
project
choice.
kind of identified a similar piece of the land as for future development, the 2 lotter that Melinda referenced, as I recall, but, I mean, some of it is, I think everything north of the Velco line is gonna trip as core habitat, right? It's all, in probably deer wintering area, you end up subject to that, so.
That's a big, beautiful piece of land. Anything else on that one, guys? Mr. Turner, would you like to read that?
Sure.
Can I just ask a learning question?
You may ask anything you want.
Perfect. What is the Velco transmission easement? What is-
It's a power line that runs right through the middle of the property that, he still owns the property, but they have a, wow, I don't know how
Usually
wide, 60,
150
80,
usually 150 feet.
150 feet.
think it is.
And he owns it, but you can't build within that easement, you can't build under it, you could drive under it.
You can't even plant anything over a certain number of feet tall.
12 feet.
And anything in there can be cut down.
They'll hack it up
and come in with
without any
tractors.
notice.
Yeah, those,
Is that just a company?
Vermont Electric.
Oh, Vermont Electric, there we go.
yeah, those nice trees at Zephyr Road at the entrance to Finney.
Yeah, we know all about Velco easements.
Really pretty birches, but they're already 12 feet tall and growing.
Either that or you're dying.
Or they'll be bonsai.
It's a lifespan of about 6 weeks.
The next big windstorm.
If they're paper birches, you cut them up and sell them to go into little wrought iron, fake burn piles. Suburbanites buy that
So
stuff.
Scott,
like crazy.
another issue that we wanted to throw in front of the board is, we wanted to mention the infamous, I think I can use that word, handy wedding barn.
No.
So.
We're all eyes and ears.
So, you know, the applicant, so first it was continued forward to a date certain, and then the applicant requested that it be put on hold. And then I had an informal conversation with their attorney, David Greenberg, who happened to be in the office, and, you know, he basically said to me that behind the scenes, folks are trying to figure out something else that might take place with the structure. Okay, so whatever. In the meantime, this thing is just out there, floating out there, indeterminate. And so, you know, we had a brief discussion about this in the office. And so the question is whether or not, you know, how the board feels about that. If you just want to sort of leave it out there and then, you know, let the applicant sort of wither on the vine or come back in, or if you want to give them a date where you say, all right, folks, you got a Fisher Cut bait, come back in by this date. So I just wanted to throw that out for, you know, for discussion.
There's for all of you who were here, how do you feel about that?
It feels odd to have an open hearing.
I couldn't agree more.
That's, otherwise, I don't.
I think we ought to pick a date, take a vote, and make them show up or not.
Right, so.
That's my opinion. I mean, we got.
And if not, oh, go ahead. Let's do this.
I agree. Maybe you could solve them on date.
I mean, they can always start late, right? They've had one hearing.
Yeah.
Dave, what do you think?
I agree, you could solve with them on a date or something, that say, come back and give us your plans, or pull the app, whatever you want to do.
Or don't show
I mean,
up.
can you get them to pull it?
Well, that's part of,
Withdraw?
well, it's part of the idea of setting the date, is it says, again, it says it's like Fisher Cut bait. So if you're gonna come back in, you gotta bring any additional materials to us by this date, and the DRB is gonna hear the item on this date. And then they either do it or they don't.
So do you have a DP for that, a DP number for that? We could read it into the record and say it needs to be here by a certain date?
1801. Right.
And then, given where we are on the calendar, this being the middle of November, and we have a couple of minor holidays coming up, that will impact everybody's lives, no doubt. You know, my suggestion is you might say, you gotta come in, what did we say, by the first meeting in February?
Something like that, yeah.
Which would be February 13th.
Is there any kind of regulatory clock that's ticking? Do we have to have that hearing by a certain date?
No, once you close your hearing, you've got a clock that ticks to issuing a decision.
And we continued it.
The other is the applicant has said, they have requested. So they are requesting that it be continued. So, you know, which is why whenever an applicant does that, we always say, that's great, give it to us in writing, because we want to have that in the record, so that if, in the event that they do say, well, deemed approval, it's like, well, wait a minute, this is what you asked for. You know, we're only giving you what you asked for.
So can we say something, if you give us the DP number?
I heard 1801.
1801, yeah.
Is it 1801? So DP 1801, and the name
Or
is...
did we say the end of February, is that what we said?
You said 2/13.
If we do 213, isn't that a filing deadline of January 5th?
Yeah, I would say, why don't we say February 27th? And that way they can't whine that they haven't been given enough notice. I mean, that's the thing, is you want to, you know.
Give them a 60-day notice.
They've given, you know, it's not, we didn't give them any notice, and they can figure it out. And then tell them that they've got to get any additional materials that they want to give to us, they got to get them to us by Monday, February 5th.
What is the name of the applicant? Handy what?
I think we just called it handy banquet facility.
Yeah, that's what
So if we just simply say, from the board's position, handy banquet facility, if we simply said, handy banquet facility has been rescheduled for 2/27/18, and leave it at that, then you can notify them and talk to them as needed, and we don't have to put anything else around it.
No, so what we would do is, we would renotice it in the paper,
Yep.
we would renotice it to the neighbors, we would inform them, we would inform the applicant, of course, we would tell the applicant they've got to get any additional materials into us by the beginning of February, and then let them decide what they want to do. And then if they have questions, they'll call us, they'll write, and we'll say, yep, you know, if you want, the board's going to take it up on the 27th of February. Be there, be square.
Yep.
Can they ask for more time now?
They could.
Yeah.
I would be inclined to recommend, say, you tell them if they want to ask for more time, they got to show up on the 27th and make their case.
I think at this point, my opinion is that you can tell them that. We'll just simply, all we're going to do is put it up, formally put it out that it's been scheduled now for 2/27/18 handy banquet facility. That's it. I don't think we as a board need to get into any in-depth instructions to the applicant. We can let staff do that. We're just simply, we are now taking this thing out of space and making it a, making it a date certain. So, you wanna do that? Or I can do it. I mean, it's perfectly fine. And it doesn't require a vote. It's just statement. Right. Okay, I can take care of that. All right. Vermont Hotel Group. Before we get kind of going on that, Matt, would you run through that analysis that you gave us on height?
Sure.
One more time, please.
Yeah. So the normal height limit for all structures in Williston is 36 feet above average finished grade. There are a few zoning districts, and the one we've experienced the most is the Taft Corners District and primarily the Finney Crossing project, where you can go up from the 36-foot height limit to the 52-foot height limit on a building that either provides perpetually affordable housing or a minimum of 30% of its parking demand in a structure, which has typically meant under the building. When that bylaw provision was established, the town expressed through some community input a desire that we not have lots of 52-foot tall 4- and 5-story flat roof, very urban looking buildings. And there's some other places in the bylaw and the town plan where there's language about pitched roofs being seen as desirable in Taft Corners. So the first part of it is, what do you have to do to be allowed to go to 52 feet? And in Taft Corners, there's language about that, and in Business Park, there's language about that. It says, affordable housing or structured parking can get you to a 52-foot limit. In Taft Corners, there's another paragraph underneath that that says the intent of this is not to let somebody have a 4- or 5-story flat roof building with structured parking underneath their affordable housing unit, but rather to have 3 or 4 where the grade allows, or says depending on the grade.
What does that mean?
I think it
grade
Based on the
allows?
overall height?
I think typically it would mean a building that, at least on one aspect, has a high grade on one side. It's built into a slope of some kind.
So that part of the building is 4 stories and part is 3, but your average grade is still gonna be.
Right. So, and it says that the intent is to have those 3- or 4-story buildings, depending on grade, with a pitched roof element. So,
Would that apply here?
So, in this case, this zoning district doesn't have that second paragraph in it.
So, okay, so going back then, just so I'm dense, okay? Which zoning district has that other statement about building?
Taft Corners.
Taft Corners District.
Yes. Yeah. This district just says, if you do structured parking or affordable, you can go to 52 feet.
And most likely what happened was that was a clerical error. So.
I kind of figured that.
So.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Was there some meaning behind that?
I have no reason to think that was the intent. In fact, the idea of extending the height bonus to this zoning district, this was something that staff brought to the planning commission. So it was our doing, and I think our thinking was it should be the same as in the Taft Corners zoning district. We didn't see any. There was no good reason that we could think of as to why you would not allow it.
So is it conceivable that the age-restricted housing that is going up behind this could be 4 stories? Could have been 4 stories?
Could have been.
Yeah.
Because they've got parking underneath, right?
They have parking underneath.
Yeah, I mean, really what's missing from Business Park that we think probably should have been there is this statement about we still want to see a pitched roof.
And what we're hoping to do is we've got a bylaw cleanup coming up, and we're going to propose that language be added back in. Obviously, we can't until the planning commission and the select board votes, you don't know what you're gonna get, but I guess I would be surprised if there would be any pushback on it. It's not like, I don't recall there being any strong feelings about it one way or the other. Again, the idea of extending it to the zoning district came from the staff, not from anybody else.
But right now, the way the regulations are, they could come back with a flat roof and not have any issue.
There's no outright prohibition on it here.
Yeah.
There is some language in 22, which also applies to this, stating that pitched roofs are generally considered desirable / required unless the building's an industrial building. I gotta say that in the time we've worked here, there've been numerous non-industrial flat roof buildings proposed and approved. And I always bring that pitched roof language from 22 up, and rehab gym's a good example. Not a 52-footer or 36-footer, but say. So the bylaws got this stuff about wanting pitched roofs. Does anybody feel strongly about a pitched roof on this building? And there's never been anybody in my memory who's on these boards who has said, yeah, that really ought to have a pitched roof element to it.
Is there a definition of pitched roof? Is there a certain pitch you need to have it qualify for that?
I don't believe our definitions cover that. I don't know, for example, if some of the pitched elements at Maple Tree Place that are really just, a parapet with a pitch sticking on it are considered compliant.
I'm thinking something that's very shallow.
Right,
very
this one,
shallow
it's
pitch
a shallow pitched roof.
that you can't even see from the ground.
Right.
So what's everybody think of this?
No problem with me.
I think it feels not the content, it feels kind of out of context or out of character with the building that's on the site.
So it definitely does, yeah.
That's out of our control, but it just feels like it's gonna feel like a weird use pairing once it's built.
So I think, I don't know how we deal with this, but when you come from Brownell Road toward Williston, this sucker is going to block out the sun. It's on the road, it's 4.5 stories tall. It's gonna be, everything, it's gonna totally change the streetscape. By, not a little bit, I mean, a lot.
It was amazing just when that willow blew over, that changed the feel of that, that just the one tree.
I think it sort of begs the question, though, will it change it for the better, or will it?
I don't.
And that's the thing, yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's the other thing, is the buildings that come after this proposed hotel I'm not sure that I would characterize them as architectural masterpieces. John, you might, you're the architect, so you might.
Don't be laying that on me. I mean, these are two different things here. I mean, that's what I was asking about.
Yeah, that's a cap on the page from.
Well, I almost asked that question, but, but this has this nice green space out here that that view that you're looking at has some parkland, has some green space, has some breathing room, versus this, which has got a bunch of parking lot right in front of it. It's just asphalt lawn. And even as they've got it shown, the dive down underneath the building right there, which you're gonna be seeing. You're gonna see the sign up there that says,
12-foot height, whatever.
9-foot clearance, beware.
Well, they said they're gonna move the dive to the far end.
Exactly, which was, I thought, an improvement, though they were, she was talking about two different accesses, but this only shows one.
Access, but for
She was talking about, going in and out here and.
No, she's
here.
talking about getting rid of this.
I know, but even when she said that, she was also talking about another access at this end.
No, that was pedestrian to get into the building off of walking.
This is where I think they should.
They're just walking.
And then it's just cars in and out here.
Right, so there's only one way in. I thought she was talking about a second
No, I don't
way in
think
over
so.
this end.
She said the pool's going to.
Oh, yeah.
The pool and poles, right.
Right, that's a good idea. Nobody can do that.
Rooftop pool.
So, I mean, again, so I'm gonna ask our planners over here, what is the vision for the sidewalks and the pedestrian walkways along that road? now putting this giant building that's going to be this, what's gonna look like more than 50 feet when you're that far away from it as you walk along the sidewalk, is that, and it's gonna look like the side entrance of a building, that's why I was asking about what that elevation is and how does that address
Wait till
the
Mary
street?
Jo gets a hold of this one.
So, that was my purpose in asking about that. And we said, oh, we'll give you the model. Well, I want you to actually think about what this is going to do.
Well, one of my thoughts is, they had shown us some concepts years ago that were a reworking of the post office building as opposed to another building on the site. And the one advantage of slamming this thing off into the corner the way it is it leaves the rest of the site open for potential redevelopment at some point. I mean, the post office building is, stuff hangs out for a long time in Williston. I'm not gonna pretend that building's, it's horrible, about to be redeveloped tomorrow. But you look at what's left on this site, and, you build this new hotel off in the corner, and there's a lot of space left to play with someday. So I like that. We did also have a point where the bylaw was amended to make the setback for buildings to Williston Road the same on this side of the road as it is on the other side of the road in Taft Corner, so 25 feet instead of, I think it was 50. It was 50 feet from all roads before in Business Park, which really encourages this very space-intensive office park environment. And what we're seeing is, given tighter setbacks, developers have been willing to do stuff that comes up to the street or comes up to the paths. You have a multi-use path along Route 2 in that location that's there. So another thing that's different about this site versus being in Taft Corners is we don't have the 5 of 9 design criteria that Taft Corners projects need to meet. So this is your urban park, public art, wide sidewalks, solar panels on the roof stuff. We don't have anything like that over here. So, the board may recall when we were fighting with Rehab Gym about having that entrance facing Route 2A, and you're trying to pin the desire to have that on something and not having the same kind of design criteria that you have just across the street at Taft Corners. So, in my opinion, something that comes up to the street is better than not. I do think it's big. There is a little more grade as you go up. Like I said, it'll ruin the view of the Superstore.
Oh, yeah.
Coming from Commerce Street or Brownell. But, it'll be big and it'll be really obvious, and you won't be looking down over the roof of the post office building anymore from Taft Corners.
But that's a little out of our purview, right? I mean, we don't really have any way to judge, evaluate aesthetics, right? Whether it looks good or not, there's not something in the regular bylaw.
There's design elements that'll be required as part of 22. Most of that's gonna come down to not having dead walls, to having articulation, appropriate landscaping. There is a statement in there about sizing outdoor spaces appropriately. Oddly enough, it's mostly about not making them too big, because it was a reaction to the gigantic green at Maple Tree Place. But you can read between the lines a little bit in 22 and read that places should look nice, they should be pleasant to walk outside of, they should work well in terms of a relationship to the street. You've got parking lot landscaping requirements that are going to require 5% of the parking lot to be in a landscape configuration with shade trees and better lighting. I mean, my other comment about applying the parking standard site-wide is I wouldn't discourage the board from looking at the whole site, and if there's junky streetlights somewhere else in the parking lot that ought to be switched out, this is the time to do it. If there's landscaping that's bad over in front of the post office, this is the time to go get it. Ken and I, one of our regrets when Clark Sunoco came through for their redo is we didn't make them fix, there's a street light that's like doing this. And it's overly bright and it's not well shielded, and we probably could have gotten Clark Sunoco to redo that light as part of that project.
Yeah, but at least we got rid of the rainbow.
You got rid of the rainbow canopy and the bad sign, and I mean, it made a leap, but
it looks a lot.
Drive by and I see that one tilted light post that the plow hit all those years ago. We could have gotten that. and it'll be a long time before we get another shot at it. So, you know, this is the kind of site where I look at that post office building and go, yeah, you know, I mean, I need it. There's a junky master sign plan that I basically helped the owner cobble together when he was trying to land Paper Peddler and Skeevy East in there.
There's a $2 million TV studio in there.
That's right. They make propaganda, don't they?
Incredible acoustic treatment.
We did a change of use on that, I recall that. There's also, not on any site plan I can find, and I'm not sure when it went in, there's a whole ton of ground-mounted mechanical behind a fence, sort of facing this hotel pad that, I don't think that was ever memorialized on a site plan or approved by anybody. It's an opportunity for the board to try to get that cleaned up as well.
Do we do that now, or do we do that later?
Oh, that's later.
Well, later, but I think what you say is, compliance with the bylaw needs to be addressed site-wide, which I called out the parking that way in the staff notes, but you could emphasize it if you want to.
Is it more than parking, is it parking, lighting, landscaping?
Parking, lighting, landscaping, bike parking, ADA.
Trash enclosures.
Yes, screening of mechanical, screening of dumpsters. If the post office is doing anything that we would call outside storage, that should really go away. I don't know that they really are. They do have a loading dock. Pretty clean over there, but.
You got that. Compliance with the bylaw will need to be site-wide, required to be site-wide.
They should be in communication with Public Works about any desired future sidewalks, much as Heartworks and Three Friends Partnership in Blair Park needed to look at desired sidewalks. We didn't get anything in the Public Works memo about it, but I would still encourage them to ask Public Works if they don't find out late in the game that somebody wants a big sidewalk that's not shown yet.
That sidewalk's gonna get built, right? Did I see that funding got approved for that?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. I biked through Blair Park recently because I've been taking Zephyr Road to Blair Park home on my bike, and there's this poor guy with a walker who's out on Blair Park Road from the bus stop to the assisted living. He's in the street with this walker going, 1 mile an hour. It's like, there'll be a real impact to filling that gap, at least for that guy.
Put it in a place where it should.
You just put it anywhere, right?
But because you don't have any other option, you put it there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the chair will happily go on record amongst ourselves here. I guess I'm not on record, but this sucker sucks. I don't like it at all. I think it's terrible. I'm not sure what I can do about it, but.
We even use the hotels we have. Just curious.
There's a lot of hotels being talked about.
Hmm?
There's a lot of hotels being talked about.
Yeah,
Hey,
well,
do we even fill
me
the
too.
one- Do we fill the one?
Actually,
I'm hoping,
that's what I was just
I'm
wondering if you should recuse yourself from this.
No, we
because
actually-
Mary Jo might get
Yeah,
this.
right. Yeah,
When you said her name, I was like, oh no, wait a minute.
Right.
Oh, because
Scott's coming in 2 weeks
Well,
for
I mean,
application.
my company's involved in the next hotel, but
right, but
can't
if
recuse.
if I were designing it and he was building it, then would we all recuse ourselves?
Exactly, right, in this case.
So how many units is that gonna be?
Yeah, I checked in on that, just to try to be as upfront as possible on that. Aside the fact that, we're involved with the hotel, I don't like the fact that you're gonna drive down the road and it's gonna be a massive, massive change too.
And there's nothing that we can, see, that's what I was getting at when I'm talking about this elevation that's right against the road, because there's a huge difference when that's 4 stories and then a pitched roof on top of that, 20 feet away from the sidewalk, or whether there's a 1 or 2 story section and it steps back. I mean, that's essentially what Burlington requires at this point, as you get further.
I mean, could we say the same, what you had said, that, I don't know how the board feels about this, but turning that 90 degrees so it faces the road?
Somebody over there, David asked.
Somebody, you did.
But that's even, I was.
That's
more
even
visuals
there.
right now.
That's really.
But what you're getting though is you get an end with a wall right along the road versus a massive 150-foot long, 50-foot block you're gonna see. So at least your vision line as you drive into Williston will go along, you know, the wall along the road, as opposed to
In your face.
this as you're coming in, right? It's the difference between,
What's the height of that building?
I'm not being real articulate here.
Well, they said they tried that though, and I could see where you
Well,
couldn't
I-
make that work.
You line it along
Okay,
the
so they
road.
tried it, who cares if they tried it? Tell them to go do it.
No, but I can see where you can't make it work.
You
If
can't
you
make
line-
it work.
if
Of course they
you line-
can.
If you line it along the road,
Without
everybody walks on
retotally
that, the
fence
sidewalk will be in
around.
the shade.
When you drive
So what?
over there, you don't.
You can do it.
Well, if they're
day.
doing if they're doing
So what?
underground for most of it anyways, and doing shared parking, how many extra spots do they have to come up with?
I mean,
anyways?
I mean, we can, so guys, we can tell them to do that if you want to.
On it and, you know,
Didn't
And
he
then
say-
they can come back in and argue.
Side and little articulation of the building. And
He made a comment about showing us 3 different angles. Maybe that was just.
Well, they're gonna do that
just
anyway.
initial.
So that's we're gonna see that.
Didn't she say something about
It
they
blends
tried
right into
simple ways and
they did.
But
But
that's developer speak.
Do we know
That was
Or we don't wanna do
that
that.
was actually engineer speak.
Okay, so that one, you're
It
right.
was engineer speak, meaning we didn't like the way it worked there from a civil engineering standpoint, so therefore,
Therefore,
there's not a good solution that we like. And
That doesn't
we don't
mean-
want to try it anymore.
That doesn't, right, doesn't mean it can't be done.
My response is always, and I use this with my clients a lot, is they can build a Hoover Dam, they can do that.
Right.
They're trying to maintain visibility for those retail tenants from the street. is what-
That's the biggest issue I have with that. I get back to this whole, with the shared parking study and all that, and you're looking site-wide at parking. Is there a real possibility that we're gonna be able, we could have them getting rid of some of the surface parking there? I mean, to go to the paper peddler, you don't need that second row of parking closest to the road.
So they
There's more than
have,
5 cars there.
first off, they have proposed additional surface parking on this plan right now. This is more
Yeah.
surface parking than there is there today. You know, I would encourage you guys to look at this the way you look at, you know, when we took Maple Tree Place, who wanted to expand and said, well, you're gonna knock your shared parking out, you're gonna knock 20% out after that. Now, in Maple Tree Place's case, that still justified an increase. But, you know, even a few spaces that might buy you a bigger green on the side / front of the hotel. There's kind of a funky thing going on in that northeast corner. You see the space that's X'd out, that's 90 degrees to the other ones.
Yeah.
That's weird, for lack of a more technical term.
Well, and the sidewalk, it just ends right there too.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a grade element there that they're also,
That may be a retaining wall. I think that's a retaining wall.
yeah, I think you're right, John.
I mean, I think they're gonna have some engineering issues on the backside, like Paul was pointing out.
I would agree that when they get into the nitty-gritty of this, they haven't done a whole lot of site plan reviews.
They haven't done a lot of design work either, I don't think. Because this is, as somebody said, I think this is a file photo from the hotel close. That looks like Florida.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to the one that's posted on Bayer.
Did
you see that one?
No, that's one of those ones where I don't want to see it.
It kind of looks like this, actually.
I mean, there's the only locus of this drawing we got. Right. It's pretty, well, it's not very sophisticated.
But this is Photoshop.
Exactly.
Well, yeah.
Right. But this is like one line diagram of, this is cartoon. they haven't thought that, showing any structure. You gotta hold up that hotel through the parking garage. Not that it's impossible, but they're just.
The other thing that we can always communicate to the applicant, yeah, you know, based on what we see if and when they file for discretionary, and based on, you know, how it responds to what you tell them, we can say things like, we do to some applicants, like, you should expect this to take more than one meeting, you know, and that's always the board's option to say, you know, we want this continuance, but, you know, we can say things to applicants like, the board's not gonna like that, or the board's gonna wanna see a lot more detail on this before you move forward. But it's a good time to come in and, you know, get that process started. You know, you guys have a long tradition of doing a lot of things in one night, but you don't have to do things that way.
That's right. The other thing that's missing in this picture is the exhaust units for the parking garage. You gotta have a place to get the gases out of the building. If you go over to the two senior living centers, the one that has underground parking there on Blair Circle, it has that nice big metal grill that sucks the little fans come on and suck the exhaust gases out of the building. So the question is, I don't see any grate that's gonna end up being, attached to that parking garage that's gonna basically be sucking fumes out of there.
So this is pre-application, so there's a lot of details.
There's a lot of detail missing.
Well, there's a lot of details the applicant is not required to provide.
Ah, okay.
So what the applicant is required to provide at pre-application is pretty basic. And sometimes we get pre-applications that will have a lot more detail than is actually required. But all those sorts of things, those would all be required to be shown in fully engineered drawings with, part of John Hemmelgarn's comments about, elevations. All that's going to be required when they submit for a discretionary permit.
So when they come back around again.
Right. And understand, we don't administer a building code. So, we're going to look at elevations in that, but we don't administer a building code, we don't administer a plumbing code, a mechanical code, we don't administer any of those codes. So, as far as those things are concerned, it's a public building and they would have to meet the state building requirements that's administered by the Division of Fire Safety of the state of Vermont. But, we're not going to be requiring to look at their, at their ventilation plan for inside of the building, for example.
I'm not talking about the inside, I'm just saying those parking garages have to have that section on the outside.
So we're going to be looking at all of those things as they would appear on the buildings, and that would be like the mechanical equipment, any of that sort of stuff. But they'd show us that at the time they came in for a discretionary permit.
Now, this building is going to be reviewed by the applicant.
Yes.
And they will have some say on building materials, certainly. Building form, building massing, the context.
22 is not so great on things like form and massing so much as articulation and detail and compatibility of materials with one another more so than with everything else in town necessarily.
So there's really no avenue here to comment on these things for us, as well as open space, on-site or green space, public accommodation.
If this was across the street, you'd have a lot more to pay comments.
Hey, Matt. What do you think the argument is if we go back to your comment in the bylaws, or your reading of the bylaws of 4 stories depending on the grade? What grade?
Well, the depending on the grade language doesn't actually exist in this zoning district right now.
Okay, that's not.
Well, neither does the allowance for 4 stories.
Yes, that part does.
It does, yeah.
So in Taft Corners, the allowance for 52 feet is up here, and the restriction on it only being 4 stories if it's a pitched roof is down here in the second paragraph, and that's the way it looks over at Finney Crossing and the rest of Taft Corners. In Business Park, only paragraph 1, which says if you do structured parking or affordable housing, you can go to 52 feet. Only that paragraph is in Business Park.
I'm just gonna pick a few nits here. I thought we were, that generally in Williston, you were only allowed 3 stories.
No, generally in Williston, there may be some desire for pitched roofs articulated for commercial buildings. Generally in Williston, you get 36 feet, period.
And there's nothing, it's silent on the number of stories.
Correct.
But for that one paragraph in the attached corner.
When you access the 52-foot
So
height
if
limit.
you wanted to squeeze 12, 4-foot floors, then you could. If it was,
I suppose.
mass housing for small people. I mean, a little facetious here, but
In fact, that may be the only place where the idea of a story,
They need a place to live too.
that may be the only place where story is used as a description of building form, is in this idea about the building height. You know, if I had to guess, I would guess that the people who were participating back in, 2005, 2006 around this said, yeah, we'll soak it up and let people have a little more height if they do things we want, but we don't want prison architecture
with floors filling all the way up to the 52 feet.
right up to the very top,
Okay.
and then
All
you've
right.
got this flat roof, and it doesn't look very good, and you can't
So-
screen your mechanical and all that kind of stuff.
You ever drive down I-89 into New Hampshire, past Lebanon, and on the right-hand side, about 5 miles in, that big, huge apartment building on the right, one exit in, 2 exits in?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Don't, I drive there all the time too.
I don't know how many stories that is, 7?
I think,
Six?
isn't the college some,
I have no
It
idea.
used
It's
to
just,
be-
it's monolithic and,
I ate in a Chinese restaurant in the basement of that building.
It's horrible.
There was this attempt at ground floor retail, it was like subterranean.
That's actually,
That's on the east side of Lebanon.
just off the highway.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was a piece of state college.
So what I was hearing amongst the folks here in this room is that, as you mentioned, that given, this could actually go the other way, that this could actually be more stories than a flat roof and that just,
Well,
geez.
I wouldn't encourage it.
I'm not, if I were there and being aggressive and.
But there's also nothing wrong with you guys as a recommendation saying, we're aware there's a serious potential for visual impact. Scale is important. We're gonna want you to show us how this thing's gonna fit within the context of the scale and, up to and including the positioning of the building on the site. And if you feel strongly that you want to know what it would look like rotated 90 degrees and fronting on Williston Road, there's nothing stopping you from asking. The applicant will show you that.
So,
3.5 acres.
board requests. Show how this building fits into the
They went
context,
in the summer,
including
6x6,
an option where
It's just
building
it's so
is cited parallel.
And it's just, look at it and say yay or nay.
Williston Road.
It's very utilitarian.
I think what Matt also got into in terms of massing, siting, how it fits on the site, how it interacts with other buildings, how it,
Well, they show an overhang that actually intrudes into this 10 feet.
So you have the massing,
Matt, you want to run through what you said? You want to run through about sitting on the site, massing, how it interacts with other.
Right, so I would just say, what I'm hearing the board express is concern about the visual impact from the street, the way the building sits on the site, and how that size of building is going to look and feel in the context of the other things that are around it. And then it sounds like you might be asking the applicant to show you, either a plan or a rendering of what it would look like if it was rotated 90 degrees so that the long side faced
What
Williston.
if we asked them to step the building back? I know that topic came up.
You might do that, or, you might say, we'd really rather see a steeper roof pitch with that fourth floor existing in some kind of an architectural feature.
I mean, what if we step the building back from the road?
We don't have any grounds to, just other than.
Well, this is a conversation, we can say what we're.
Well, so yeah, the most you can peg it to is the intent statements in the design review chapter, which say things like design matters, the way things look is important. I can't quote a chapter.
No, but that's close enough.
It's different from saying you gotta be 25 feet back from the edge of the road. It's not as prescriptive
Board is
as
concerned
that,
about the
but-
way it interacts with the site.
Yeah.
Please consider stepping a building back by 4.
That's subjective though, right? It's.
Of course it is. This whole board is subjective.
Well, no, if it says 25 foot setback, that's 25 foot setback, but if you say it looks good, or it
But
fits
we're
in
listening
there-
to, we're listening to Matt quote the bylaw saying, that, it does matter how the building sits on the site, how it interacts with other buildings. And that is subjective,
Totally.
right?
Right.
So.
And I don't know how we would enforce that.
I don't either, and I think this is the only chance we get to say these things that we can enforce.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what you don't get to do is deny or approve something based solely on something.
Kind of like the fire chief.
But
we can put it in here and they may change their site plan.
If they later on say, we think we're meeting a standard, and you say, we think you're not, the next place to go is back to the intent statement at the beginning of the bylaw and try to judge those two things against.
There's more to it than that, because we still we're still the final arbiter of how this looks on the site, within reason.
So what they'll come back with is, we step it back, we lose some of the room count. All of a sudden, the pro forma doesn't work because we went from 96 rooms to 88, blah, blah, blah. That's
absolutely what's gonna come back.
Absolutely what's gonna come back. Well,
But we can say that we asked.
Well, I think we're here to do more than ask.
I think we need to say something along the lines of, really express our concern about the mass of this building and the visual impact and
John's got that.
yeah, and looking for creative solutions to mitigate the impact. And one option that we've identified is to step back from Williston Road, but we're looking for the applicant to consider other options as well.
You getting all that?
Yeah, I think.
Once you're done with your pen, you can read it back.
I mean, this could really be a black eye.
Well, I have a feeling that we're thinking it's gonna be the tallest building right there, but based on the slope of that land, this building probably won't be the highest building right there. The Kidder Newhouse building probably will be around the same height as this building. Because this is.
You think so?
Yeah, because this has gotta be at least 15 to 20 feet lower on grade than that building.
It's in a low area.
Well,
Why do you think they planted the willow?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but you come in, and then Kidder Newhouse is sitting right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so this is flat.
Yeah.
This is flat, and the hill grade starts.
The Kidder Newhouse is on the hill. The
It's kind of built into it, though, isn't it?
Parking lot, yeah, it's built into it, but the elevation is a lot higher.
Is that that's 3 stories?
Yeah, 3 stories.
There's 3 stories. Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dave.
And then even the new building that's gonna be behind the Kidder Newhouse is gonna be just as high too, because that one's up on the bank further. Yeah, or it could be higher even there.
I think my issue is not necessarily 4 stories. That's not really my issue. My issue is how it's sited and how it's going to be viewed coming into Williston, driving east.
Yeah, I think we need to maybe do something with maybe the front, like you say, pull up some of the blacktop, make some green park area or something there, make it look appealing.
I'm less concerned with that than I am the overall scale of this. I mean, it's gonna remind me of the Barnes and Noble in Burlington, which is just too big for all the other buildings that are there. The floors are too tall, it's bigger, it's a different scale. It's like you put a model train set, it's the wrong scale.
What's the height of the IBM credit union? 40 feet maybe?
I think the Davis Center falls into that category too.
It does a little bit, I hadn't thought about that. On the other hand, it can kind of get away with it because it's kind of this flagship building on the campus.
I think the only reason why it's getting away with it is because we've gotten used to it. But the reality is the scale of that building is a little off.
It's big. So what do you got? You want to read it?
What do I have? I have, the board is concerned with the massing and the visual impact of this building from the street. The board requests the applicant show how this building fits into the context, including options such as where the building is sited parallel with Williston Road, stepped back from the street, or incorporating the top floor into a steeper roof.
Okay. Anything else anybody want to add into that?
And I'll let you figure out the verb and noun agreements later.
Yeah, I can do that tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Not gonna-
I'm not doing it right now.
Anything else anybody want to add into that? I mean, are you all on board with, with this?
I think we're asking, I mean, I think all those things would make it a better project, but if they say no, I don't know that, we can cross the bridge when we come to it, but it doesn't seem like the regulations are there where we can enforce any of that. The stepping back or the turning to the law.
You can vote no, they can sue you. They can, appeal.
I guess my comment to that, David, is don't underestimate your power of persuasion.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I think, one of the other things I have too is that, can you imagine what it's gonna be like when you drive into this parking lot, you drive by that crazy brick, thing that's glommed onto the post office on the front, and then you drive up to the nice new building, and you're,
It totally,
Hopefully the owner will be changing the post office building soon.
Post office has a long lease in there.
Yeah, I would
That's what I'm
imagine.
told.
no, it doesn't, it's 5 years.
I don't know, I thought I heard.
Federal buildings are all 5 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, retail's been more successful in the front end.
The government never signs a lease longer than 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's given it another life where,
I didn't expect a paper peddler to be there a year.
no.
I'm surprised.
No, but they got the UPS store right next to them, and between that and the post office, there's a little, sort of center of that kind of activity now, and it works.
Unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, this is a 3.5 acre lot, this is a big site, and it's kind of weird the way it's broken up, unfortunately.
All right, anybody, you have anything else, anybody want to add to this? Okay.
Joe Baird has emailed about this part,
You drive back? Yeah. Then I'll leave after you. You won't run this.
Yeah.
Gmail.
Yeah, I'll send that, I'll just say.
That was just my.
Okay, you all set? All right. Okay, Town of Williston's Development Review Board is out of deliberation on Tuesday, November 14th at 9:05. 3 items to vote on tonight. First up, do I have a motion for DP 10-34, Chittenden Solid Waste District?
As authorized by WDG 6.6.3, I make solid motion that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 14th, 2017, accept the findings of fact, conclusions of law, recommended conditions of approval proposed by staff for the amendment of DP 10-34, and approve this request to construct additional stormwater improvements as described and depicted on the submitted site plan for the operation of an organic waste recovery facility on the subject property. This approval authorizes the applicant to submit final plans for the signature of the administrator in accordance with the approval of this permit by the DRB, and to seek the approval of administrative permits in strict accordance with those final plans in order to develop the site as approved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Dave seconds it. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Do I have a motion for DP 18-08 Quinlan Residential Subdivision?
As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, David Turner, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of town staff and advisory boards required to comment on the application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 14, 2017, accept the recommendations proposed by staff for the review of DP 1808, and authorize the applicant to proceed to residential growth management allocation.
Great. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
John seconds it. Any further discussion?
We want to basically make the statement about the lot 1.
No.
No.
I don't think so. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve DP 18-06 Vermont Hotel Group?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, John Hemmelgarn, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearings of November 14th, 2017, accept the recommendations proposed by staff for the review of DP 18-06, and authorize the applicant to proceed to discretionary permit review. We're going to add 2 recommendations. Number 5, the applicant shall provide site-wide compliance with the bylaws, including ADA and bicycles parking, outdoor storage, lighting, signage, equipment, screening, buffers, etc. And recommendation number 6, the board is concerned with the massing and the visual impact of this building from the street. The board requests the applicant show how this building fits into the context, including options such as siting the building parallel with Williston Road, stepping it back from the street, or incorporating the top floor into a steeper roof.
Back on the first recommendation that you added, are we gonna get into trouble by listing out all of those different areas? Matt had originally said something along the lines of compliance with the bylaw will be required site-wide. Broad, covers everything, doesn't start to.
I don't mind striking off the examples.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's do that and reread it.
Says, recommendation number 5, applicant shall provide site-wide compliance with the Williston Development Bylaw.
Okay, you guys okay with that? Make sense? Matt? Okay, all right. Everybody on the board okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so 2 additional recommendations. Anybody, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Dave seconds it. Any other discussion? Everybody's okay with those 2?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Let's see, piece of business, DP 18-01 Handy Banquet Facility Hearing. had been continued and has now been scheduled for February 27th, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 24, 2017?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 24th, 2017, as written.
Okay, Pete makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
John seconds it. Any further discussion on that?
Just a
Yeah.
question on the application we denied.
Yep.
We still list the conditions of approval are in here. I imagine that's just kind of, that's the format we follow, even though it was denied. We still list.
That was part of the record. So the conditions of approval were part of the record, and we denied them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the conditions were not adopted, so the motion says there's a denial, the conditions, it's a record of what staff recommended should you go toward approval, but you didn't.
Everybody still okay with the minutes as written? Okay, who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Pete made the motion, who seconded? John seconded?
seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did everybody vote? 7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:12?
So moved.
Thanks, everybody. So what do you think, guys? You ready to get off?